was in a practice. Maybe people will be able to get on.
All right, we're calling this meeting to order. I'll take attendance. Jake Gold, present. Damaris Reyes.
She was on.
Yeah, I also saw her on. Let's come back to Damaris. Alistair.
You didn't say anything.
Oh, Alistair, hi. I'm sorry, you guys are behind my my word. Andrea.
Present.
Thank you. Herman Hewitt. Absent. Trevor Holland.
Present.
Thank you. Laura Lugo. Let's come back to Laura. I know that she was trying to get on earlier. Sandra Struther.
Present. Hi.
Thank you. Jackie Wong. And Dominic Berg.
Present.
Thank you. Ariadna.
Present.
Thank you. Steve. Absent. Megan Joy.
Present.
Thank you. And Anisha. All right. Before we go any further and before I enable interpretation, we, I guess, have to take up last month's minutes. Any objections to adopting the minutes? All right. Without objection, the minutes from April are adopted, or I guess March are adopted. Let's move on to the big event, 70 Mulberry. Yes, Priyanka, I won't. Who should I promote to be co-host to share their screen?
That would be Yo-Yo.
All right, I will do that. All right. Yo-Yo, you should have ability to share your screen.
Hi, good evening, everyone. We have language interpretation enabled for this meeting, as you see on the screen. To access live language interpretation in Mandarin and Cantonese, refer to the instruction and screenshot below. Once the language function is activated, one can click the interpretation in the meeting control. Next to listening in, click the drop-down menu. Select the audio channel you want to listen to.
Renee, can you unmute yourself and provide the translation in Cantonese? Thank you. Renee might be having technical difficulty. Jinting, would you want to go first in Mandarin?
Hi, thank you. And I can do the Cantonese instruction too.
Okay.
To do that.
I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yes, Renee.
Oh, I'm sorry. What happened? I thought I was on mute just now. Okay,
Yeah.
can I repeat again?
Yes, please.
Okay. 我哋為本次會議咧，佢用咗翻譯。如果如需使用普通話或者粵語嘅嗰個時事嘅翻譯咧，請參閱以下説明同屏幕嘅在圖。第一，就點記咗會議控制中心嘅 interpretation， 即係口譯。第二，點記咗嗰個 listen in， 就係收聽嘅旁邊嘅下拉嘅菜單。 第三咧就選擇收聽嗰個音頻嘅頻道。
会议，我是今天的中文翻译。那现在跟大家说一下呢，如何使用翻译来收听普通话粤语的。然后呢，请参阅以下的说明和屏幕截图。第一呢是点击屏幕下方的 Interpretation， 就是口译按钮，是一个地球图标。然后呢，点击之后呢，会看到有2个语言的选择。如果你想要收听普通话或国语的话呢，请选择 Mandarin， 就是 M 开头的那个单词。谢谢大家。Thank you. Back to you.
Hi, CB3, please activate the interpretation function.
All right, activated.
All right. Hi, everyone. I am Jerome Alas, the project manager for the 70 Mulberry Street reconstruction project with NYC Department of Design and Construction, joined by co-project manager Midori Tanabe. I'm also joined by DCAS, Grimshaw, and 3x3. Thank you, CB3, for your approval in March for the 70 Mulberry Street reconstruction project. The project team is excited to present an updated design to you all, and I would like to hand it off to Yo-Yu from Grimshaw.
Hello, everyone. This is Yo-Yu Chen of Grimshaw Architects. I'm the project architect for 70 Mulberry Street. It is a great pleasure to join the CB3 meeting today. The 70 Mulberry Street project is a critical community asset. We further developed the design and I'm very excited to share the project update with you. We are in the middle phase of the design and the content we are sharing today is work in progress and we will keep developing it in the coming month. Following the January 2020 fire and July 2020 announcement of funding and process goals, the community visioning process was initiated in September 2020 and led by 3x3 working for the owner, DCAS. An initial preliminary research and planning phase was followed by a series of community meetings and workshops, a survey, and an ongoing document review for 90 days. The result of the community engagement led to DCAS and DDC brief and a budget to rebuild 70 Mulberry in November 2021, including additional offices and tenant spaces and a multipurpose athletic activity space in the new building. Grimshaw and the team was selected by DDC to design the new building. The design team started the programming phase in July 2022, a meeting with 5 tenants that previously occupied the building and will return to the new building. You can see a list of community engagement that already happened and at the bottom is upcoming engagement event. The project has 4 key project scope. The first, preserve and restore portion of existing historic facade. Second, return 51,000 square feet to the previous tenant institutions. The third, additional 16,500 square feet community space and offices. The fourth one, accessibility enhancement and sustainability. The preliminary design meet all the project scope requirements. The project team kicked off the design last August, and we are about 9 months into the design phase. As mentioned, we will keep developing the design in the coming month. The design is subject to change as we continue refine the plan. 70 Mulberry Street is a historic landmark in the memories of generation, designed and operated as a public school 23 in the late 1800s. And in its more recent history, the 5-story brick building was home to nonprofit community groups and served as an anchor to its community. The original large cornice was demolished and an additional floor was added. That dramatically changed the look of the building, with the stair tower losing its prominence.
I'm sorry to interject here. We have just seen this presentation last month, most of it. We were hoping that because we have such a crowded agenda, perhaps you folks could focus on just what's new from the last time this was presented at CB3. Would that be okay?
Yes, I think the next page will be the
Okay,
new
perfect.
content.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry, we're just very pressed for time.
Okay, so so this is the so we talk about the design updates. What have been different from the previous show? First, the biggest one is we keep the existing cellar boundary and the cellar floor slab, and the building a new level 7. So the building, we add additional floor, level 7 to it. Retain the current extent of the existing cellar without any further excavation beyond its perimeter walls and without going deeper into the ground. This approach aims to reduce the expensive construction, mitigate potential unforeseen risk associated with cellar, and we move half of the mechanical space from the cellar to level 7. The leftover space on level 7 is assigned for additional community space, enhancing the overall value and the livability of the building to the community. And the second point is we apply building integrated photovoltaic panels to the new facade and a PV canopy above the roof to generate renewable energy. By implementing building integrated photovoltaic panels on the new facade of the building and adding a photovoltaic canopy on the roof, we are aiming to harness the maximum renewable energy through solar power generation. The BIPV technology allows photovoltaic panels to be seamlessly integrated into the facade. It's similar to maintain a typical, the maintenance is similar to maintain a typical glass facade. And then the next, we like to share the previous rendering we shared with you. It was a 6-floor building with level 6 setback from the street. With level 6 setback from the street. The stair tower is a key contributor to the architecture character, but the previous model, we model it 8 feet taller than it's in reality. And then we have street trees planted echoing the greenery from the Columbus Park, and trees will be planted at the terrace level. And the design is to distinguish the old and the new facade. The next is the new design. As you see from the screen here, the proposed design is a 7-floor building with level 6 and level 7 setback from the street. The design implements building integrated photovoltaic panels on the new facade of the building. And then there is a PV canopy on top of the roof, aiming to harness renewable energy through solar power generation. The new design will remove the stoop and egress stair protruding into the sidewalk and provide a better connection between the street and the ground floor pedestrian. The nighttime street view captured the building in the early evening, showcasing its strong connection with the street. And the building achieved the connection by emanating lights from its windows, effectively illuminating the surrounding area, enhancing safety for the pedestrian, and showcasing the new building is open to the community. And this is the previous view from the Bayer Street. And then this is a new design, proposed design from the Bayer Street. It's a 7-story building, as you see from the view, and then level 6 and level 7 setback from the street. And then we have a PV canopy on top of the roof.
Hey, we should say that those windows at the top there are for the new community room.
Yes, exactly. Yes, this is the prime location. It's great. Looks overlooking the Columbus Park. Yeah, this is for the new community room, and we are going to share with you in plan shortly. And we're taking a closer look at the proposed ground floor. You can see the new entrance at the Mulberry Street, adjacent to the stair tower. The tower window proudly displays signage showcasing the 5 organizations within the building, along with the important building information. This serves to broadcast the diverse program and services offered, while also encourage the community to make use of this vibrant space. We are in collaboration with advisory group to do the signage design to ensure it maximizes its benefits to the community. And we are going to walk you through the revised plan. First, this is the proposed site plan with 3 street trees planted along Mulberry Street and Bayer Street. And then we have PV canopy installed on the roof. We have, this is the first floor plan, and we have entrance at the Mulberry Street. Tenant and members will have their badge and be able to swipe through the turnstile and go directly into the stair towers and up to their floors as in the pre-fire building. A visitor will go through the security and given a temporary pass to get through the turnstile. For those,
maybe to Jake's point, we just point out the key changes since last month.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So the key changes is we have the building trash area like integrated to along the back of house service corridor, and then the elevator at the south. It's a swing elevator. Is served for the freight and the passenger elevator. So the back of house services is not crossing the front of house services. Level 2, we have the community space on level 2, and then there are 2 tenants on level 2. On level 3, there are 2 additional community space, additional rooms for the community and tenant. There are 3 tenants occupied level 3. And on level 4 and 5, the Chinatown Manpower Project, they provide the services, and this is the plan on level 4, and then the plan on level 5. This is the level 6, the double high multi-purpose space. In the following slide, we will share more about the flexibility and then the how it adapt to a different event mode. To support the multi-purpose room on level 6, as we mentioned before, we have storages and fabrications, and they can the space can be accessed through the service elevator. And this is the new level 7. This is the bonus area, extra space at the southwest corner. facing the Columbus Park, which will be dedicated to the community use. As mentioned earlier, we located about half of the mechanical space to level 7, and then this is the leftover space, the bonus area. It's additional community space, and then it's a prime location, and then has great view towards the Columbus Park. This shows the roof plan. We have a seating area along the west and south property line. And back to the cellar, we offer tenant bike racks and the lockers, changing rooms at the cellar for the commuters who travel with their bike for the tenant and its member. And we like to, this is the building section, provide the stacking strategy along Bayer Street. There's a double high lobby, create inviting and the spacious entrance. Adjacent to this area at the southwest corner, there's 2 community rooms are positioned. Moving up to level 3, 2 additional offices are situated, providing dedicated space for tenant and the community use. Finally, on the new level 7 are 2 more community rooms. We like to take a closer look to the community space in level 1. It's equipped with the movable partition, and it can be folded to accommodate various of activities. The lobby area can be arranged in different configuration based on the needs. For regular use, it serves as both the lobby and the community space. For event, the lobby area can be extended to create a larger space suitable for lecture, community meeting, and the galleries, as shown in the bottom. This is the level 6 plan configuration. The space is designed to accommodate a wide range of events such as community galleries, press release, job fair, fundraising activities. This slide illustrates the versatility of level 6, showcasing the diverse activity ranging from gala to lectures with the maximum capacity of 492 individuals. Display here are various potential plans configurations for level 7. This configuration range from a lecture setup capable of accommodating up to 96 people to a more intimate workshop arrangement for 30 individuals. And this is the update. We are very happy and excited to share with you. And please contact us if you have any feedback or any questions.
Thank you very much. Priyanka, should I disable the interpretation now? Hearing nothing, I suppose I'll leave the interpretation on.
Yes, Jake, we should keep it until we finish answers.
Sure. Okay. I understand. All right. I think that first we'll go to members of the committee. Members of the committee, if you have questions for the presenters, please raise your hands. All right, Ariadna, go ahead.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. I had 2 questions. The first was to clarify from the feedback we heard in our last session, additional space was extremely important. The 2 additional spaces from the last plan to this one is the 2 new rooms on the 7th floor and the additional room on the 3rd floor. Is that correct?
We always
Um,
have space on the 3rd floor for the community space. The new space will be on level 7.
Okay, that's clear. And then I was wondering where the addition of the solar panels came from. Was this something that was requested specifically? How did that end up being added to the design plan?
I think the previous design we share is a matching study, and we are investigating different cladding material for the facade. And we met with the community member. We found we want to make this building, like I would say, forward-looking, and then make commitment to the next generation. And we figure we figured the climate changes is the very urgent task for our current generation. So this building should demonstrate the statement, the more forward-looking for the next generation. And the building photovoltaic, as you see on the screen, it's the maintenance is similar to the glass facade. It's very low maintenance, but at the same time can generate energy up to, I would say, up to 25% of the building energy consumption.
That's clear. Thank you.
All right, any other members of the committee have any questions for our fantastic presenters? Hearing none, I'm going to turn it over to members of the public. Members of the public, we are going to try to keep this relatively brief just because we do have a lot on our agenda today. So I'm going to cut you off after 2 minutes. So we are going to start. If you have questions, comments, please raise your hand on Zoom. Okay, we're going to start with Carlin Chan. I'm going to promote you temporarily to panelist.
Yeah, hello. I like that you added on the newer design, you added the 7th floor there and the 2 community rooms. Now, are those community rooms accessible by booking, same as the 3rd floor community room and the performance space? Now, while the facade has been changed to this new material, it is better than the previous design, but it still doesn't really fit into the context of the neighborhood. And I also like to point out that since Mocha is building a brand new headquarters, a 7-story, million-square-foot, is it wise to keep them as a tenant there? Maybe they should vacate their space there and give it to another community nonprofit. Thank you.
For your first and third questions, I'd like to defer to DCAS, and for your second question to Grimshaw. So, Joe from DCAS, please.
Yep, thank you. For the first question regarding the additional community space, that will be reserved in a similar manner that the rest of the community space is in the building through a booking process that DCAS will establish, so that all the community space in the building will be booked in the same manner. Also regarding the question regarding Mocha and relocation, the commitment was to restore all 5 tenants. I'm unaware of any communications or discussions otherwise, but I will make a note of it. Thank you.
Yeah, and I can jump in and add to Yoyu's explanation on the facade and the PVs. I think for us, there was a strong sense from the community about looking back and respecting the past and the heritage of the building and preserving what's left and making it integral into the new design. And also our desire for an optimistic and hopeful building for future generations. And this is a place where the community gathers and learns, people get training, kids learn new skills, socialize. And in order for them to have that hopeful and optimistic future, we need to address climate emergency. So for us, that was the way to reconcile the looking back with respect and looking to the future with hope. And we are approaching 30% of the energy that the building will need created on site, and we hope to improve on that as we develop the design some more. So we think our provocation to everyone is that all buildings should look like this for the next decade or two until we fix the problem. Otherwise, our kids and grandkids won't have the kind of world we want to leave them.
All right, I see some hands from the committee, so I'm going to go to Trevor first.
Sure, and thank you. It's just a quick follow-up on the solar panels. Are they going to a battery backup or do they feed back into the electrical system?
So our engineers are proposing that, I mean, we're using all the electricity that's created here, but it feeds into the grid if there's any excess, rather than having batteries on site that are without cost and still some risk, you know, about fires as we've seen. So yeah, that was their suggestion. It's the most effective way to do this.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Dominic, go ahead.
Yeah, it was kind of similar. I was wondering if, especially given the text changes that we're going to talk about, if you all were going to be able to add any battery energy storage on the roof as well. If you're looking at that. So,
I mean, we looked at it for even for emergency power, and the batteries are huge. Like they were 3 shipping container full, which added a lot of weight, and so we thought that the most sensible way forward at the moment, given where batteries are, was just to connect to the grid, and we're helping. The building will be helping to keep the peak loads down. You know, so if all buildings did that, the grid will be able to cope more easily, while the grid itself becomes 100% renewable, at which point, you know, 10, 20 years from now, we can move on from addressing the emergency, we hope.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I really commend you all for incorporating that and looking into it. Thank you.
All right, Eric Chu, go ahead.
Thank you. I want to repeat Carlin's concern about the way the building looks and how it integrates with the neighborhood. I appreciate the effort, but I'm concerned that I assume that blue color on the building is the building integrated photovoltaic glass, and that it has limited selection, and then it might not be able to fine tune that in any way that harmonizes with the existing building. That would be my fear. And then from the rendering, there's no indication if the detailing is elegant or cheap. It looks a little cheap from the rendering. I assume that's not your intention. And I'm worried about that photovoltaic array on the roof. I appreciate the effort again, but doesn't feel so integrated with the building. Obviously increases height, creates shadow. So my gut feeling is good try again.
I defer to Grimshaw to respond.
Thank you, Eric. Your comments are noted.
All right, why don't we move on to Richard Moses? It says talking permitted. Richard, if you can't speak, then
I think I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yes, I'm Richard Moses. I'm president of the Lower East Side Preservation Initiative, and we're mostly concerned with the facade design of the building, kind of echoing Carlin's and Eric's comments about the integration of the design with the original structure to remain, and also with the surrounding Chinatown community, which is, as you know, is a national register, part of a national register historic district. And I would say one of the most important national register historic districts in the city, if not in the country. So it's something that I think should be given a lot of weight in the design. I think that the new design is an improvement over the old design, like Eric said. The setbacks, I think, are effective. The solar panels, I think might be a little bit much right now and could be maybe toned back a little bit, but I think conceptually it's not a problem. But I do think that the facade design above the second story definitely needs to integrate better with the original building, or just go back and sort of replicate what was there. But I think that it's very difficult to do a new design on a historic building like this. It is possible. At Lower East Side Preservation Initiative, we're very supportive of contemporary design mixing with historic design, but it's tricky, and I think that this design definitely needs more work. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Richard. Okay, Sandra, I see we have from the committee raised your hand. So Sandra, go ahead. And Eric and Richard, if you could lower your hands, please.
I was a bit hesitant to respond, because I am on landmarks committee, but because I feel remiss that I didn't follow, you going to landmark, what LPC said about the building. But I, of course, agree with Richard. It just doesn't complement. I don't think that it complements not only the lower floors. The upper design does not complement the lower floors. It doesn't complement the community. I think we're seeing too much of this gray, this gray material. And I just don't understand why you didn't try to replicate what was there before. You can add the top floors, but it just doesn't match well. It just doesn't look well together. So I agree with Richard and Eric. Maybe you should go back to the drawing board and try again. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Sandra. I don't see any other hands, so I think that we will move on to a vote on the resolution. Is that right? Yep, no hands. All right, well, thank you folks for presenting. I'm going to disable interpretation. Oh, nope, I'm going to disable interpretation now. Carrie, I see that you've raised your hand. Would you like to, I'll promote you to panelist.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, thanks. Thanks for the last word. I'm just reiterating what everyone else has said, and I'm the author of the Chinatown and Little Italy National Register nomination. So I feel very much moved to say that this really doesn't fit in. This is not in context with the community. I do appreciate the attempt to add the solar panels and to bring this up to a modern standard that we all need, but it just doesn't work. The corporate curtain wall look, it almost looks like a 1960s public school married with this beautiful 19th century school. So I would ask the architects to really reconsider their materials and do try to incorporate the solar panels where they can, but certainly not in the way that they have. Thank you.
All right, and with that, okay, and I see one more comment, and then I'm sorry, that's it. I'm going to close comments. Peg Breen, I'm promoting you to panelist. And Sandra, if you want to lower your hand, we're going to be talking about the resolution soon, and so if you have feedback, we can do it then.
Can you, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I'm Kate Breen. I'm president of the New York Landmarks Conservancy. We've been through most of those meetings and followed this, and I just wanted to echo the last few comments. It is just too disparate. It's like a couple of different buildings that kind of wandered into each other somehow. And there has to be a way to incorporate solar panels that don't make them loom over the building like that and make them so obvious. This is an important National Register district. This is a very important building of its own, CBJ Snyder's very first school. It was a beautiful building, and it needs beautiful additions. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'm going to demote you. All right, I will be disabling interpretation. Thank you, DDC, DCAS, Grimshaw, everyone who came to present. I really appreciate it. And so does everyone, I'm sure. All right, I will now be sharing my screen for the resolution that we have for this. How about this? Can everyone read this? Oops, sorry.
Yes.
All right. Do folks have thoughts about this? So would anyone like to make amendments?
Jake, are we seeing the full resolution there? Oh, I
Yes,
see.
yeah,
Okay.
I see hands raised. Trevor, go ahead.
Yeah, I think when we do this, I think it's important that we not take a position immediately. At the last line, therefore be resolved, CB3 supports. I think that just immediately puts it into a state that not all members may or may not agree to. So I think that's important that we don't, in most of the resolutions that we write, we leave that blank. So I think we need to take that out before anything. We did hear some concerns from the community. I was hoping to hear some more from folks who live in the community. I know we heard a lot from preservation specialists, which is critical, but what is also critical is for folks who live in that area. And I know there were a lot of people on this particular meeting, and maybe they didn't feel like it was appropriate to speak, but I didn't really hear that. But just to make sure that when we write resolutions, we don't immediately say that we support or not support a particular position.
Sure, and I apologize if this was a violation of norms. My understanding was that when we receive a model resolution from an agency, that we can take that resolution up as written. This was not written by me. This was a resolution that was written by the agencies and sent to us for us to approve, which is why it says that we support. If we decide that we don't support, of course, we can take it down. Now, I'm sure Susan will correct me on the norms here. Susan, if you want to go ahead.
No, I'm going to say I feel guilty that I didn't catch that. Usually we take their resolution, which captures all the information, but leaves, as Trevor says, leaves the last part blank because it's not predetermined. And, you know, I think we just got it from them, and I certainly didn't read it closely enough. But it's, you know, the whole thing, except for the last line, would have been considered. So it'd be therefore, it'd be resolved and then blank.
All right, Sandra, do you want to, actually, Trevor, do you have anything else, or do you want to?
I mean, I heard some concerns. I think we probably need to put them in somewhere. I don't have the language for it, and I hate to say, hey, just insert something and I don't have the language. So I'll get back to you, but let other folks speak. I'll see if I can give you some language based on what we heard from the community.
Sure, Sandra, go ahead.
For one, I think it should be changed, critical community asset, and it should be pointed out that the historical significance of the building. It was 18. Do I create the language for you? It should be, should I say the language?
Well, so propose an amendment and then we can go from there.
Oh, okay. No, okay, I see it down a little further. In the fourth whereas, it says the original designer was Snyder. Okay. All right, let me just write the amendments. I'll come back.
Okay. It's probably worth noting for the record here that we have already approved a resolution that sent to the PDC, and I believe the full board has approved a resolution that sent the prior design to the PDC. We are now looking at the design, basically the marginal design that has changed from the last time this was before us, which is just, in my understanding, mostly the addition of the 7th floor.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Trevor.
Jake, do you remember if there were similar concerns about the facade, or is that new? Because what you're saying is basically we've seen this before, and maybe we've seen it more detailed facade, but do you remember if we heard some of the concerns about the facade itself?
My recollection was that it looked the same. Do other committee members remember? Ariadna, do you remember?
Yeah, I think they showed one image in the beginning of their slides where the facade didn't have those panels in the past. And I think there was also not the solar panels on the roof either. It was a much simpler design. So it's, I think, the addition of that 7th floor as well as the photovoltaic panels and the solar panels in the rooftop, the biggest change.
Okay, I might be wrong. I seem to remember that there were something on the roof. Susan, go ahead.
Yeah, there were solar panels, but they were different shape.
Got it. Thank you. Okay, Sandra, do you have amendments that you'd like to propose, or Trevor also, but Sandra first?
No, I won't, because like you said, it's already been approved. So I wasn't at the last meeting, so you're only talking about a specific part of the building. So
Dominic, go ahead.
I just want to say that, I mean, I think so. I would be in favor of approving this. I know Trevor's working on some language for how to incorporate some of the feedback. So I think I'll wait for him to do that. But I think it's, I hear the concerns, but I think when we are facing and are in the crises that we're in, and you're developing something, it's very difficult to retrofit once it's done. And this is an opportunity to maximize, trying to offset the carbon footprint. And, I think, I think it would be great if there was some way to break up the panels a little bit more. I think that was what maybe some people were responding to, but I think fully removing them would be an immoral mistake. So I would say, that we should, support this as pretty much as is. And also pointing out that it should be therefore be it resolved, not therefore it be resolved as it's written in the bottom right now.
I noticed that, and I was having like Bernstein Bears Mandela effect thing happening where I was like, is it always therefore it be resolved? But that doesn't sound right. Thank you for your comments, and I will make that change. Ariadna, and then we can go back to Trevor and Sandra.
I had a clarifying question. So if we were to edit, part of what we approve, let's say we say that, the full photovoltaic panels, we remove that from the resolution. Does that mean we only approve the additions that were made in the plan that doesn't include those panels, for example? Like, are we able to pick and choose it essentially the changes that they proposed?
Can I defer to Susan on that one for the procedural question?
Sure, I think you can approve or not approve whatever you want, but then what are you saying? If they have a design that has solar panels, are you saying that you don't approve them, or are you just leaving them out?
Right, that would be my question. Like, do we need to be careful how we word this to say we refer to either the previous one that we've already approved, or do we have to reject it fully because it wouldn't be the design anymore that they're proposing?
I think you could ask that they revisit, the solar panels.
Okay, thanks.
All right, Trevor, go ahead.
I share Dominic's, concern about incorporating the solar panels, but I want to ask the architect about the solar panels, if I could. I don't know if they're still on. From the picture that was shown, they appear to stick out over the roof. If you were to shift those back to on the roof, how much does that change? I guess the question is, instead of them hanging over the side of the roof, if you just move them back to where they were on the roof, would they still be as efficient?
So part of it might be the way the rendering is done, because the panels are set back 20 foot from, just like the whole of level 6 and 7 is set back 20 foot. But they are above the mechanical equipment, so that's why they seem, so powerful, if you like. If we set them back some more, you would just have less PV panels, so your 30% would be reduced, right? That would be the impact.
I guess you're saying that because there's something and we're only going by the renderings, but there's something behind those panels that prevents them from moving back just a little further.
Right, because we show the site plan, and there are PV panels over the mechanical roof, the setback piece,
right,
over all of the mechanical roof. So it would just be about eliminating some of the panels on Mulberry and Bayard, so reducing the amount of panels, because we can't push them back because we're already over the site. Yeah.
So you're saying that you can't push them back to the point of where they're over the roof, they're back as far as they can and actually overhang the mechanicals.
They're literally over the roof. It's the angle it's the way that the rendering is done, that it looks like they're overhanging, but they're not. They're on plan. They're literally set back 20 foot directly over the mechanical roof.
Okay.
It's a perspective. It's almost like a perspective trick. That maybe it's when you try and straighten the building in perspective to show it vertical, that's what happens. It looks a bit distorted at the top. If we did a human view when you're standing at the street level, the human eye doesn't see it quite like that. You would have to look up, right? So you're trying to show in one rendering the whole building, but it's not. It becomes a little bit distorted in order to do that. It's not how a human eye would see it.
Okay, thank you.
Megan, go ahead.
In light of Juan's comments just now, knowing that those those solar panels or electrical panels are set back 20 feet, just like the 6th and 7th floors. And also in light of the fact that we've, as a community board, already agreed to most of the design of this building. It's just these new aspects. I would lean towards supporting this project.
Thank you, Megan. So in light of everything that we've heard from the architect, and thank you very much for sharing that context. Trevor, Sandra, do we still have amendments that we'd like to have the committee consider? Would we like to consider the resolution as is?
I don't.
Go
Go ahead,
Trevor.
Sandra.
No, go ahead, Trevor. You started.
I don't have any additional comments. I mean,
Neither do
I would like to see an additional rendering, but understanding that number one, we're time crunched, and number two, on the agenda is something dealing exactly with this type of issue. That I don't have any additional comments.
Neither do I, Jake. I just wish that the architect had a better rendering, so we can actually, have a clear picture of how the building will look. But
Sure.
I don't have any objections.
I've never made a rendering, but I imagine it's very hard. So I appreciate the difficulty there. Ariadna,
Yes.
do you have an amendment or?
I would like to propose an amendment where we remove in the 5th whereas, integrating the photovoltaic panels in the facade. I don't have a problem with the roof canopy, but I do think a lot of people spoke up in opposition of maybe the way the facade looks compared to the rest of the neighborhood and the character of the more historic buildings. So I would prefer if we remove just the integrated photovoltaic panels in the facade and we can keep the PV roof canopy.
I understand. So my guess, well, actually, sorry, is there a second, Trevor? Is that what you raised your hand for?
No, I wasn't going to second that. I was just going to comment.
Okay. If I could briefly, my guess is that the way that we would speak to that is that in the therefore be it resolved, we would say we support the above described design with the exception of, rather than removing the description of what was presented to us. Does that sound right to folks as a matter of resolution writing?
Well, I have a real issue with removing the photo panels at all.
Okay.
I don't think that's a big critical. I know this is a historic neighborhood, but in terms of what we're facing climate-wise, to the city is attempting to build solar panels in a building, and we're saying, no, we don't want to do that. I think that's wrong. I think we're going to have to face some choices. I do agree that there could be possibly a better design, and maybe we're not seeing it from the renderings, but to remove that, I think is especially, and we're going to hear a lot about it in our next agenda item. I think that would be a big mistake for us as a community board, considering sustainability and all the other issues. Change is hard, and I get that, but I think if it was completely set back on the roof, it might not be as jarring. But I'm hearing the architect saying that with a 20-foot setback and the rendering isn't as accurate as to what you would see from the street. I think it's a pretty difficult thing to do, to say removing it. I think what the middle ground may be to say that we would prefer if there was a way to move that back. It would be better, but not to remove that from. And I think it's actually required for new roofs anyway, from the local law perspective, that any new roof, it's either got to be painted white or put photo panels on. I think we got to be very careful.
Thank you. Could I ask, I guess, taking this in the correct procedural posture, I probably should not have asked Trevor to speak first. I should have asked, is there a second on the amendment? All right, hearing no second, we are not going to bring that amendment into the resolution. Thank you for proposing it, Ariadna. Does anyone have amendments to the resolution before we take it up for a vote in support of the preliminary design phase?
I do.
Dominic, go ahead.
I'm about to put it in the chat
Okay,
and people can tweak it some. Whereas the current climate, this would come after the whereas about the photovoltaic panels in the facade. So it should actually say after number 7, it should be : and then the next whereas would be, whereas the current climate crises we are in calls for immediate and all tools out of the toolbox measures, the addition of PVC, and we can spell that out, on the facade and roof are responsible measure and message to the current community and future generations. Probably a message about the importance of sustainability to the current community and future generations.
all right. Folks can see that proposed amendment in the chat, I hope. Do we have a second on that amendment?
I
Second.
can second that.
Okay, so I'm going to put this in marked changes, or sorry, track changes. Oops.
I will say, I wish there was a way to go to 50% of building sustainability, but I know it's difficult with today's technology, especially with the weight of batteries.
Responsible measure and a message. Sorry, Dominic, could you repeat message about sustain?
Yeah, I added it to the chat. Message to the current community and future generations about the importance of sustainability.
The end of generation. Yeah.
Current community and future generations about the importance of sustainability. Okay, and Dominic, also you had mentioned spelling out PVC.
Photovoltaic panels.
Did I get voltaic right there? Yeah, looks like it. Okay. So I guess we will do a.
Excuse me, Jake.
Yeah, Sandra, go ahead.
I have one more thing. There's one whereas that I totally disagree with. It's where the design will celebrate the historic facades and distinguish the new and old envelopes. I really don't think that it does. I think it clashes.
Sandra, I'm sorry to cut you off, but can we take a vote on this amendment first?
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, yes. I'm sorry.
Okay, sorry to cut you off. I just want to make
okay.
sure
No.
we're going in order. Okay, I'm going to, I guess. Actually, how about this? No, let's do a roll call vote. Give me one moment to pull up attendance. Okay.
You could just ask if there was any opposition to the.
Yeah, okay, that's the right way to do it. You're right. Does anyone oppose this this amendment? Speak now.
Yeah.
All right, the amendment is adopted. Now, second amendment, Sandra, I'm sorry, go ahead. Oh, sorry, Herman has an objection. Let's see. I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with the parliamentary rules here. If we attempted something by unanimous consent and we get someone saying no, do we need to proceed to a roll call vote?
I don't know if he's opposing it or is he saying that he doesn't oppose it?
That's a good question. Herman, would you mind clarifying? I do not oppose it. Good. All right. The amendment is adopted. Sandra, go ahead. Present your second amendment.
Yeah, and I feel bad because I wasn't at the initial, meeting where this was discussed. So it's that's the part that was approved at the last meeting, right? The rest, the facade and all of that was already discussed and approved. Okay.
Yeah.
We're only basically talking about the the panels at this point, right? The roof. The rest of it was approved, right? And then-
Yes, that's right.
Oh, okay. So never mind. I don't have an amendment then.
I mean, I think that there was a change to the facade, and so if you'd like to propose removing this provision, I don't know that we are in some way bound by our past resolution.
Okay, but yeah, I'd like to take that out because in my opinion, it just doesn't, but it just doesn't, highlight or even, associate itself with the community as it's rendered, the way it looks, it just is totally disassociated. It doesn't look like the rest of the community.
Sure. Do we have a second on that?
Yes, I'd like to second that because in the last resolution or the last meeting, we did not approve the facade. That was not what was presented to us. So I think it wouldn't make sense to say that we're preserving the historic facade.
Okay. I guess, I'll first try by unanimous consent. Are there any objections to adopting an amendment that simply does that removes this provision? Hearing no objections, the amendment is also adopted. All right, so does anyone, Dominic, I see your hand is still up. Sandra, your hand is still up. Do you
Oh,
have
sorry.
amendments, or are we ready to
No.
move on to the therefore be it resolved clause? It sounds like we're moving on.
Moving on.
So I would propose an amendment that says, community board 3 supports the above described design for 70 Mulberry Street. For the community center at 70 Mulberry Street. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Are there any objections to this amendment? All right, hearing none, the amendment is adopted. So I'm going to accept all of these changes. All right. Now, I suppose, are there any objections to accepting this resolution as written? And I'm going to show it in its entirety so that we can
One question, if I vote against it, what does that mean? Does it mean it's just on the record that I didn't vote for it?
Right.
Yes, that's right.
I would personally like to reject.
Okay.
We have to have a roll call vote.
Yep. So for adopting this item, Jake Gold, yes. Damaris Reyes. Alistair Economicus.
Yes.
Andrea Gordillo.
Yes.
Herman Hewitt. I just realized that we have not promoted Herman to panelist, so I'm promoting Herman now. Trevor Holland.
Yes, and Herman chatted, yes.
Perfect, thank you. Herman, you've been promoted to panelist. My sincere apologies. Laura Lugo.
Yes.
Sandra Strutter.
I have to say no. No.
Okay. Jackie Wong.
Building at all.
Absent. Dominic Berg.
Yes.
Ariadna Chua.
No.
Steve Herrick. Megan Joy.
Yes.
And Anisha Stephen. Okay, fantastic. The resolution carries 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 to 2. All right. Moving on to the next order of business, we have a presentation from DCP about the first City of Yes zoning text amendment. From DCP, I believe that I saw Francesca has already been promoted. Would you like to be made a co-host?
That would be great. Thank you.
All right. And thank you to everyone from DDC and DCAS.
All right, just bear with me one moment. Make sure I'm sharing this. Can you all see our presentation today?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Okay, well, so first of all, hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here this evening to talk about the City of Yes for Carbon Neutrality text amendment, which is an opportunity to update our zoning regulations to help all of us meet our city's climate goals. It's great to be talking to you about this again. So City of Yes for Carbon Neutrality is the first of 3 projects that the Department of City Planning is developing as part of Mayor Adams' broader City of Yes initiative, which asks agencies to take a hard look at outdated regulations holding New Yorkers back from investing in their homes and businesses and the city overall. The 2 other initiatives, Economic Opportunity and Housing Opportunity, will begin more public engagement later this summer. So to clarify, these are all distinct and independent proposals, and to avoid inundating the community members during the public review process, because these can be really dense, they're being staggered the rest of this year and into next year. We've been researching sustainability related issues since Zone Green in 2012. And with this foundation in place, this is the first amendment of these that we're advancing. Additionally, many of the elements of this proposal are urgently needed, including relief to home and building owners who are trying to undertake, smart or cost-cutting retrofit projects that help the environment, but who are prevented from doing so by zoning. And then finally, this is not the last word on sustainability. Sustainable practices have been deeply embedded in our work and planning for decades, and will continue, obviously, to be present in all of our work, including economic opportunity and housing opportunity as those come forward. So why are we even talking about carbon in the first place? I'm sure you're all aware we're facing a climate emergency, which is largely fueled by global carbon dioxide emissions. And this has shaped the policy landscape of the last several years. Carbon dioxide makes up the vast majority of the United States greenhouse gas emissions, 80% in 2019. And that all comes from human activity, specifically combustion of fossil fuels like diesel, gasoline, natural gas, home heating oil. And then 2016 saw the world community join together in the Paris Agreement, which was a vision to curtail human greenhouse gas emissions in order to limit overall warming to 2 degrees Celsius and thus prevent further environmental damage associated with climate change. Meanwhile, here in NYC, we've been implementing this vision through a number of initiatives under the umbrella of achieving carbon neutrality by reducing the city's emissions by 80% by 2050, or the 80 by 50 plan for short. So what do we mean by a carbon neutral city? For one, it's a city in which we're focused on reducing operational carbon emissions in line with the goals of the Paris Agreement. So first, that means a city where we reduce our overall energy needs. And to do this, we'll need to retrofit almost every building in the city to become highly efficient and reduce wasted energy. Secondly, it's also a city where we've cleaned the grid. And to do this, we'll need to switch from fossil fuel power electricity to renewables like solar and wind. And finally, it's a city where we've electrified all remaining energy needs. That includes vehicles, our buildings, meaning moving away from fossil fuel run furnaces and boilers to newer electrically powered technologies for heating and cooling, namely heat pumps. And as you can see in this chart, the key driver of our city's carbon emissions by far is our building sector. And there's a big relationship between our buildings and the zoning laws that govern them, which is why we are undertaking this through the tool of zoning. And this isn't the first such initiative. In 2012, the department issued Zone Green, which is the first comprehensive overhaul of our zoning to support emerging green technologies like rooftop wind and solar. And while this was a good start, it could have gone further. So in some ways you can think of our research now as a follow-up to Zone Green, basically a chance to revisit it after 10 years and update it and adjust it in light of the many technological and legal changes since. And these include, since 2016, the focus on decarbonization coming from the Paris Agreement and the 80 by 50 plan. It also includes feedback from architects, engineers, advocates about issues that they've identified and ideas for improvement. And this resulted in updating the zoning to reflect, firstly, the Climate Mobilization Act at the city level, especially Local Law 97, which will impose strict fines on large buildings which do not reduce their carbon emissions, as well as, secondly, the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act at the state level, which in particular set ambitious solar and energy storage goals for the city. So development of this proposal began in March when Mayor Adams announced his vision for a city of yes. And since then, we've conducted extensive outreach, in particular with practitioners and other subject matter experts, to make sure that this proposal will be helpful. DCP is aware of criticism that there hasn't been enough sharing of information about what we're working on until it's already in the public review process. So to make good on our promise to do better, we've held 4 open to the public info sessions on this research. 2 in October of last year and 2 in March of this year. Our chair, Dan Garodnick, invited all the community board chairs to these and encouraged them to share the information and events with their boards. And then last month, we also partnered with Urban Green Council, which is a recognized leader in climate work in New York City, to convene a group of technical and policy experts to review an initial draft of the proposal to validate the climate goals and the solutions we're putting forward. Along the way, we've been asking experts, nonprofit leaders, advocates what we need to help achieve our collective climate goals and how has zoning helped or stood in the way. So tonight we'll review 4 key goals the proposal seeks to support that arose from that feedback, as well as the 17 specific zoning changes we've identified to achieve all of those goals. So here is a quick snapshot of those goals and their relevant proposals, which I will go into in a moment, but just to give you kind of a bird's eye view of what we're looking at here. It includes updating our energy landscape, and that in itself includes measures relating to solar, wind, and storage. Greening our buildings requires updates to zoning around retrofits and performance standards. Decarbonizing our transportation will mean changes to parking and facilitating charging opportunities, and addressing our challenges with waste and water includes zoning to update our streetscapes and composting regulations. So let's dive in and we'll take a deeper look at these goals and proposals. So there are 4 key goals detailed in the amendment. The first of these is supporting the decarbonization of our city's energy grid. I want to clarify that illustrated on this slide are initiatives that are already underway at the state or city level. I need to stress that these are not part of our zoning proposal, but they are the context for this proposal. So by 2040, New York State is legally required to achieve 100% renewably based energy grid. To support this, we will be developing large amounts of offshore wind and bringing in more clean hydroelectric power from upstate in Canada. However, this transition will need an all hands on deck approach. And this includes putting all of our rooftops to work, generating energy across the city. To give you a sense of where we stand with rooftop solar, in 2016, we set a goal of getting to 1,000 megawatts of rooftop solar across the city by 2030. And to date, we are currently at around 300 to 400 megawatts. So we have 7 years to more than double, the amount of solar in New York City in order to meet that goal. To use energy from offshore wind and from rooftop solar, our energy will have to become smarter and more decentralized, which is to say spreading resources and infrastructure throughout the city instead of limiting it to utility sites in outlying areas. And to support this new, smarter, more decentralized grid, as we hope to, we will need to rely on energy storage, essentially large batteries, which will act as the glue holding the grid of, this wonderful future together. To support the ongoing work of cleaning the grid, New York City zoning can help in 5 key areas. First, we can take a fresh look at our rooftop zoning allowances to ensure that there aren't any limitations holding us back from our solar goals. In many districts, there are currently limits, for example, on the amount of rooftop that can be covered by solar canopies. So this proposal will update those rules to ensure that a roof can be completely covered by solar. Second, we need to take a similar approach to our city's 8,000 plus acres of open parking areas, ensuring that zoning is updated to always allow solar canopies over parking lots. Third, if you want to generate clean energy for utility customers elsewhere in your neighborhood through the community solar program, zoning considers that currently to be a commercial use, but we need to recognize that there are large residential campuses, hospitals, schools, colleges in residential districts where community solar would be a great fit, and zoning needs to be updated to allow for this. Fourth, we will need to ensure that safe FDNY and DOB reviewed storage facilities are located where they are needed most. Energy storage is currently not allowed in residence districts where customers need access to clean and renewable energy, and zoning needs to be updated to add specific rules for energy storage and help facilitate this rollout across the city. And then finally, on onshore wind, which faces strict limits in today's zoning without a relief valve for sites where greater heights may be appropriate, the zoning proposal will create a new tool to submit onshore wind facilities for public review with the City Planning Commission. So to be clear, this proposal does not change the current height restrictions on wind turbines. It just allows for public review on a case-by-case basis. So the second goal that we're seeking to support relates to eliminating fossil fuels from our city's million-plus existing buildings, almost all of which will be around in 2050 when we need to have achieved carbon neutrality. These buildings are by far our biggest sources of carbon dioxide emissions, and to improve, we'll need to retrofit virtually every single building to retire oil or gas-powered furnaces and boilers, and replace them with new, highly efficient electric systems, as well as improve the efficiency of exterior walls, windows, roofs for heating and cooling. And it's important to note that two laws adopted by the City Council in 2019 and 2021 that are crucial here. First, for large buildings, which are defined as buildings 25,000 square feet and larger, Local Law 97 will begin to impose fines on these buildings if they do not cut their carbon emissions. So fines will begin in 2024 and then will increase through 2050. And the second, Local Law 154 requires that all newly constructed buildings are electrified from the get-go. Fossil fuel-based equipment will no longer be allowed in new construction. So within this context, zoning can help support the decarbonization of buildings in three key ways. First, zoning can accommodate increasing need for outdoor equipment, such as heat pumps, which can't be located in building basements or cellars. And it will allow them to be located above the zoning height limit on building rooftops. By getting zoning out of the way, we'll give homeowners, architects, engineers greater flexibility to navigate their best path to electrification. Then second, in the cases where someone is trying to add thicker insulation, or even in some cases for larger buildings, reclad the building entirely by removing the old facade and replacing it with a new efficient one, zoning will need to ensure that they don't run into zoning obstacles that prevent them from undertaking the project. And then thirdly, we need to update the 2012 Zone Green wall thickness deduction, which is an existing incentive awarding a small amount of additional floor area for better than code buildings. This update will reflect the latest energy code and best practices for the future. And then finally, of course, we have to talk about cost. Undertaking the work won't be free, but there are billions of dollars at the federal, state, and city level available to support it. And the New York City Accelerator Program is a program run out of the Mayor's Office of Climate and Environmental Justice that can help connect with both technical and financial support to empower folks in these projects. Goal 3 has to do with supporting decarbonization of the private vehicles that New Yorkers drive and own. There are currently 2 million private vehicles registered in New York City, and a tiny fraction, less than 1%, are zero emission. To help owners make the switch to electric, federal and state initiatives are underway. But one key issue zoning touches on is where you park and charge your electric vehicle. So addressing this need will be key to helping New Yorkers make this switch. Albany has indicated that by 2035, all new vehicles sold in New York State will need to be zero emission. While this will be a long-term transition, we know that the future is electric, and more vehicles will be electric, thus needing more places to charge. So finally, we understand that the future isn't just cars. The more trips that can be taken by bicycle or scooter or on foot or by transit, the better for the health of our environment and our city. And within this context, zoning can help support this goal with 5 key changes. The first is to allow commercial charging facilities in all commercial and manufacturing districts, because right now they're prohibited in about half the city's commercial districts. Second, it would allow building owners to designate a portion of their existing parking spaces to offer public EV charging and sharing spaces, sort of the same rules that apply currently for car sharing vehicles and existing parking garages or lots. Third, it would allow for a more flexible use of public parking lots, public parking garages, and commercial accessory parking facilities by allowing car rental, car sharing, commercial vehicle storage, and public EV charging within these facilities too. Fourth, it would expand the special rules that only apply in Manhattan that allow for indoor automated parking facilities to be available to everyone citywide. And then fifth, it would update our parking rules to acknowledge the need of public bicycle parking and allow bike parking facilities in commercial districts. And then finally, our last goal relates to reducing our city's stormwater and solid waste and helping eliminate the carbon emissions associated with both of those waste streams. So first, we can reduce stormwater runoff by promoting greater permeability on site. This means less water flowing into energy-intensive treatment plants. And then second, we can reduce the energy associated with hauling and processing garbage by reducing the amount. So up to 45% of our waste stream is organic material that doesn't need to go to the landfill and can be reused within the city. And then thirdly, we can reduce the carbon emissions associated with our food by promoting more local food production on our city's rooftops. So within this context, zoning can contribute to a better environment in 4 key ways. First, clarifying zoning's paving rules to ensure that permeable paving, which allows water to infiltrate the soil right where it falls, is always allowed. Second, it would update our zoning street tree requirements to allow for high performing tree bed types, such as connected tree beds and rain gardens. And then third, our zoning resolution doesn't even mention the words compost or recycling. It's time, I think, to add some specific rules clarifying where these uses are allowed to help these sectors grow. And then finally, rooftop greenhouses are allowed on top of non-residential buildings, but to build one, current rules require you to obtain a certification from the chair of the City Planning Commission. And so by streamlining this requirement, we will allow Department of Buildings to review applications for building permits and cut costs and simplify the process for those looking to grow food on their community's rooftops. So to wrap up, here again are the 17 specific zoning changes we've identified to support the larger project of decarbonizing our city to keep it clean and healthy and equitable for years to come. And as a citywide zoning text amendment, the process will continue for the next several months, and all 59 community boards will concurrently be reviewing this proposal with their borough boards and borough presidents, so that in July, the City Planning Commission will hold a public hearing on the proposed changes. And then finally in August, the commission will consider all the feedback they've received and vote on approving or modifying the proposal, and will then pass it on to City Council, where the council will have 50 days to ultimately adopt zoning changes and make them law. So that's it. And of course, if you have further questions about these proposals or this process, I'm happy to try to answer those, bearing in mind that I may have to take them back to the teams behind this robust proposal. Thank you so much for taking the time to engage with this again today, truly.
Thank you very much for the presentation. That was quite informative. And yes, thank you. So we will first take questions from the committee. If you have questions about the zoning text amendment, please raise your hand. Alistair, go ahead.
Hi, how you doing? Thanks for the presentation. Question for you. If you cover all the buildings in New York City with solar panels, you're still not going to have enough electricity generated to support the city. By far, it's a shortfall. I know that because I've got solar on one of my buildings, and it's a drip compared to what the building actually uses. So you're still going to have to. So then I guess my second question is, when you state that vehicles are going to be carbon neutral or will not have carbon, aren't you just shifting the carbon to be produced somewhere else? You have to generate the electricity somewhere. And most of our electricity is generated, I assume, by coal and gas. And if I'm wrong, tell me. That's fine. So you're shifting basically the carbon from the city to where the electricity generation is being produced. Is that accurate in saying that? It's you're not really carbon neutral. You're just shifting. You're just moving the carbon to another area.
I really appreciate the question. And first, I think it's important to note that that's a much wider policy question, whereas right now we're just trying to take zoning out of the way of some of these changes that need to be made. Secondly, I'll just say this is very much a both and situation. Solar, for example, being one component that we need to embrace. Wind, for example, and I will also just draw your attention to the fact that we also do plan to increase the amount of energy that we import. Apologies for the background noise, from hydroelectric, for example, from upstate. We're trying to make all of these things easier, and we're also trying to make them more efficient by reducing our needs. And so, creating better systems that sort of take the need for some of that carbon out so that we aren't just displacing it. So I think, again, there are surely going to be other changes that are made and that are being made. But at the zoning level, this is just really creating opportunities for things to be able to be built.
Okay. And I assume the solar will have incentives, because the only reason we installed solar because there were incentives that made it financially feasible. Otherwise, it just wouldn't be worth it from a financial aspect. So I'm hoping that the incentives continue and if anything, increase and encourage others to do it too.
Yeah, that's a really good point. There's one of the reasons this is coming up now is because of money at the federal level that's being programmed. There's all of this movement in the direction of renewables and cleaning the grid. So I think you will find that. Yeah.
Thanks.
All right, Trevor, go ahead.
Thanks for that presentation. I understand this is you're taking the view from city planning, and here's why I wish we had some of the more experienced land use members still here, because they would find the devil in the details. As we found out with the flood text amendments, there were things basically which allowed buildings to go taller, especially in historic districts. So I'll try and keep it from the perspective that you're presenting. But are you also partnering with housing? Because from what I can tell, most of the buildings are now required to be electric, and that impacts a lot of affordable buildings which can't necessarily convert to electric. There's a lot of issues behind that, and folks are worried that the cost is going to be the burden of the cost is going to be on the residents who live there with these capital improvements. And if you're in a rent stabilized or affordable building, that's going to put the burden on the residents. So that's the question is, are you partnering with housing to make sure we don't see this type of displacement in these areas from landowners basically saying, look, we're required to, and the zoning text allows us to, and the burden is now going to be on residents.
Yeah, that's a really great point, and I really appreciate it. I think first, I just want to say that we are absolutely partnering with this has been a tight working group with other agencies. These are absolutely things that we're being considered. I think that the other policy elements are still being worked through to help address some of these concerns. Let me kick this back to Ozka because I think she's going to have more to say on this topic. Ozka, do you mind jumping in here?
Everyone. Yeah, I think just Francesca said it perfectly. We have definitely been in contact with all our sister agencies as we go through all the different City of Yes initiatives. And I would also highlight that, this amendment is in response to local law 97. So the requirements that are in local law 97 and the local law does make provisions for affordable housing that are different. So it's on a different timeline. It alters some of the requirements and also alters or delays some of when the fines and etc. things like that kick in. So there are some provisions built in to, especially for buildings that I can't afford to retrofit or, reach those goals of carbon neutrality right away. There, especially related to affordable housing, there is some, flexibility built in there through the local law.
And lastly, have you been to other community boards and have they all been in favor of this particular proposal?
Yeah, I mean, it's early days. I personally have not. We are still sharing some of these early presentations with boards and we will continue to do so. But I imagine we'll be hearing from them soon.
Yeah, and I'd also say you can see as boards submit their resolutions on our ZAP website. So if you go to the ZAP record for this proposal, you can see as different community boards, all 59 of them, which, different planners, all the different liaisons we have throughout the agency are going to different boards and presenting to them, and then they will be sending us their resolutions. So we haven't received, I don't believe we've received any in at least Manhattan so far, but we have started our presentations in at least 5 different boards.
And lastly, what is the definition of a greenhouse? Because does that mean a penthouse, greenhouse? Is it just plants or?
Yeah, Francesca, can you go to that slide in the appendix for the greenhouse?
Sorry, let me just stop sharing because it's making everything really glitchy. So give me just a moment.
But okay, so if we can't get that, I just, a greenhouse is defined in the zoning resolution, but it's not changing sort of the rooftop greenhouses. They're used for different things. Sometimes they're used for food production and sometimes it's just for like growing up different things. So anything, if you're any sort of rooftop gardening of sorts would be considered a greenhouse. And the only thing we're really changing is that, currently there are some requirements that you require are, to get a CPC certification, but what the certification is really certifying is like very minimal things related to, its size and transparency and like those kind of things. And we're just removing the CPC certifications, but we're not changing those requirements. So essentially, if you're trying to get a rooftop greenhouse, you just have to meet those same requirements, but you just get the approval from DOB directly instead of trying to get a CPC certification, which can add time and money to the process for really no reason.
Okay, thank you. Just for Jake and Susan, if you're still on, has this gone to Borough Board yet? If known.
It can't until we vote. The community boards have to vote and then it goes to Borough Board. And
Understood. Thank you.
if I could just add, it's a non-ULURP land use action, so it's 60 days from when it was released. That it has to be reviewed by the community boards.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Trevor. Dominic, go ahead.
Yeah, so actually, a couple things. First on the timeline, on the site, it shows early May that there were borough board reviews. That may not be being kept up to date. That's on the zoning application portal, the NYC planning portal. But my question is kind of like what I think you heard the earlier item that we had, about concerns about historical context and preservation. And I'm just wondering, because I know that there are in certain special districts that there are allowances for green infrastructure to be added that breaks with whatever the limitations are from the special districts. Are you all working with landmarks preservation and getting guidance on some of this? Because I kind of I'm concerned that a lot of these changes are going to be made, and then when we face something like what we had on the earlier agenda item, that there's going to be opposition because things aren't in context, which of course this stuff is modern, right? It's new, and it's not, things are not going to necessarily stay in context. So I'm just curious about how LPC is being engaged in this, and if there's any other consideration that granted I didn't read the actual text. I read there's like a 14-page document that describes what's going on, and I don't see anything about that in there.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we absolutely have been working with LPC hand in hand throughout this, because we very much anticipate those concerns and we want this to succeed and be deployed and be something that people want. And all we are doing in this case is taking this out of the way. And so we're actually not going to be making any changes that impact the way that LPC or these special districts approach these installations. So it's ultimately, those reviews are still going to be exactly as they have been. And it just kind of makes the rules less prohibitive generally. So everything that LPC is reviewing is still going to be subject to their review. Ozka, do you want to provide any further nuance on that, or?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say, again, like Francesca said, LPC is aware about all, the proposal, the changes that are proposed as well. But, as LPC operations in terms of approval and review, they will be reviewed on a case-by-case basis. So it will depend on, any building in the historic district, and landmark buildings can absolutely apply for the things that are in the zoning resolution. I mean, the zoning text amendment, they're eligible. There's nothing that takes them out of the eligibility, but they will still have to get, the LPC sign off and approval. That process exists today.
Okay. Yeah, it would be good for them to have some guidelines on how, when this is put into, if this is passed, like how they're going to handle certain things. Because there could be a lot of conflict and surprises, I would think.
Yeah, and I think it's I don't want to speak for the LPC, but I think just as LPC in general processes things, they always review these things on a case-by-case basis, because it doesn't always. In some cases, for example, 100% roof insulation for solars could work, but maybe in some cases they require them to step back and things like that. So it's really done on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Andrea, go ahead.
Hi, thanks for the presentation. I may have missed this, and this also might be outside of municipal authority, but I was just wondering if there is any amendment related to anything with NYCHA, kind of like rad pack conversions or anything like that. Just, yeah. And again, that might be a more complicated question, but if you could just touch upon it.
No, I appreciate the question. This is specifically zoning. It will not touch NYCHA, rad pack. I mean, unless I've missed something horrifying. Ozka, do you want to double check, or is there?
No, I mean, I think it's just, this relates to all buildings, so any NYCHA building can also use any of these provisions as they apply to buildings in general, but it's not specifically, you know, addressing any or changing anything related to that.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Sandra, go ahead.
I just want to speak to Dominic's question. It probably won't have, although LPC does review case by case, they have really basically one standard rule. As long as none of the changes that you make on the roofs are visible from the street, you'll be okay.
Thanks, Sam.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, Sandra. I reviewed the text last night. It seems great. Francesca, I'm curious. I mean, this is kind of an unfair question, but I feel like I should voice my disquiet about the fact that we're permitting parking garages at all, right? And obviously this is coming from Manhattan CB3, right? Where we're incredibly, we're in a transit oasis, and many of us can walk basically everywhere we need to go. I'm sure that folks in, you know, East Queens feel differently, but the best way to get emissions out of New York is to stop having people drive here. So I'm curious what the feeling is with making these tweaks around.
I think he's frozen.
I think he froze. I think he froze. If you could answer what he.
Oh, okay. I thought I froze. I was concerned. Thank you so much. Okay, I'll give it my best shot. Okay, so I appreciate the question. It's a very fair point. It is absolutely something that DCP is considering. Parking requirements, parking, you know, minimums and maximums are very much something that we're working on generally hand in hand with other agencies. It isn't being addressed here. And, you know, I think in like the subsequent amendments, we'll be working with DOT, for example. But I think I won't speak to overall agency goals as they are continuing to evolve around parking. But yes, very much being considered at the moment.
Thank you. And wrapping it up, Herman, go ahead.
My concern is, and I listened to all of this stuff that was said, it's like it fit in one basket. My concern is that it will not be as pleasant as it's been put to be, because we don't know what the future is. One of our members said that certain things would happen in here, but you're just shifting it somewhere else. I know about the fact that you're having, right now we have electric cars, and we are promoting that. But the waste from those electric cars will have to go somewhere. And it's almost like nuclear energy. You have to sooner or later find a place to resolve the issue of the wastewater that you have to bury for 200 years. Some of the other things is what it will cost people. And most of the thing I hear is mostly penalties instead of first beginning with incentives. Okay. Incentives work a lot than penalties, because penalties is only taking money from where it could have been used for what you intended and put it into the pocket of the Department of Finance, so to speak, which doesn't come back. It doesn't come back. Okay, it doesn't help that incentive. And landlords or property owners and all of that will have to put out that cost. But you know where the cost is going to go back to? people who are receiving those services, like the tenants and the retail people and the cost. And it goes to the retail person increases its price, and the little guy pays for it. Then I'm asking, where does that energy and who produces that energy that will be
Herman,
affordable?
I'm sorry to interject, but just because we're pretty limited on time, if you could wrap it up.
I'm
relatively quickly.
closing
Thank
it up.
you. Thank you.
The whole fact is that we have Con Edison. And every couple of months, it goes up to Albany and asks for rate increases. That comes back. And they're saying we're producing clean energy, and clean energy is like, it's supposed to be more expensive than anything else. So my concern is anybody ever think about how that cost factor is going to impact the users or the end users of all of this nice little process that is being put forward?
Herman, I really appreciate that question. It's an important question. I hear there's a lot baked into that, and we'll take your comments back. But I will say that we have worked very closely, again, with advocates, with people who are considering little guys end users. This is, you know, as from a zoning perspective, these were the solutions that we found. There are going to need to be other programmatic elements that work with this. And I'll just say to the question of things like cost, again, you know, there are indeed incentives and other programs to help finance and spur this along through, for example, like as the Inflation Reduction Act is getting hammered out, you know, and practically on the ground through the New York City Accelerator Program, there are policy and programmatic structures that are continuing to emerge to help with this. But these are really, really important concerns, and they're important to DCP as well as we iron this out, which is why we work closely with advocates on this. So very much heard, very much noted. We will take back your comment and we appreciate it.
All right, Dominic, last word, please, if you could keep it brief, just because.
Yeah, it's following on what Herman was saying, but I read, and maybe, and I'm going to drop this 14-pager in the chat for you all, but I had also read that part of this program was also aimed at people being able to be more energy independent, and by tapping into the grid that you could actually get money back. So I don't know if, correct me if I'm wrong, that if this would allow, if this program or this text changes would allow for that. Because yeah, I mean, a lot of places around the country, utilities try to block people from getting solar energy. I understand it's the opposite of what is trying to be achieved here, which I think, Herman, this would help address, you know, some of your concerns there. But I think I need to be fact checked on that.
It's a great question. I think again, and I won't be able to speak to this, I'm not an expert there. I am not certain what the policy repercussions are of the local laws, et cetera, that are kind of working part and parcel with this. But just to clarify again, this is just the zoning. This is just about what is being built and not how it's being monetized, marketed, interacting, you know, with policy, with Con Ed. I don't know if maybe Asuka has further insight on how that works, or are we just gonna have to sort of see how this evolves?
Yeah, I was just going to confirm with Dominic that is something that this would allow. So especially with, you know, one of the changes, for example, is allowing battery storage of energy. So that would allow you to kind of, you know, store energy and, you know, through partnership through Con Ed and other such programs, sell that back to the grid to clean the grid.
All right, well, thank you folks for presenting. I guess actually, do we have members of the public who have questions? If you do, please raise your hand. All right, seeing none, let's move on to an agenda. Also, I'd like to apologize for having my camera off. I'm quite sick and have been blowing my nose a lot, and it's not a nice picture. All right, so I'm going to share the resolution that we have. Now the resolution, in keeping with CB custom to have resolutions stand on their own, summarizes each of the proposals. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you like half pages, and we're just going to scroll through. And I will scroll through hopefully at a reasonable pace, but if I'm going too fast, then someone just unmute and let me know, okay? Cool.
If I could just add, this is just capturing information from the DCP information, trying to capture just the basics of each.
All right, have folks finished reading?
Yeah.
I'll take that as a yes. Okay. Do any people have amendments to propose to this resolution? All right, hearing no amendments, I will propose one, which is that, let me turn on track changes, that, oops, Manhattan Community Board 3 supports the above described amendment or zoning text amendment. Susan and Francesca, would this be the correct mechanism for sending a non-ULURP?
Yeah, so we go on into the portal and, I fill out their form, but there's also provision to upload any resolution. So, I'll fill out their form, which will be approval on the portal and add this.
Okay. So supports is fine vernacular for designated or,
Yeah.
indicating approval.
Yes.
Fantastic. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second.
Thank you. Let's try by unanimous or actually,
You have
yeah,
to-
by unanimous consent, is this amendment to the resolution adopted? Any objections?
No.
Hearing none, the amendment is accepted. So now let's take a roll call vote to adopt the entire resolution. Give me one moment. Okay. Oops. To adopt the entire resolution, Jake Gold, yes. Damaris Reyes? Alistair Economicus?
Yep, yes.
Thank you. Andrea Gordillo? I think she might have stepped away. We can return to her. Herman Hewitt?
Yes.
Thank you. Trevor Holland?
Yes.
Laura Lugo?
Yes.
Sandra Struther?
Yes.
Jackie Wong? Dominic Berg?
Yes.
Ariadna Chua?
Yes.
Steve Herrick? Megan Joy?
Yes.
And Anisha Stephen? Andrea, do we have you back with us? No, that's okay. All right, the resolution carries 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 to 0. All right. Thank you, folks from DCP for presenting, and I'm sure we will see you at least 2 more times in the proximate future.
Thank you again for having us. It was a pleasure.
All right, take care. Final order of business for us is that we have to take up district needs. Susan, can I turn this over to you to give us the kind of brief explainer, and then we can talk about any possible amendments to last year's?
Sure. With my apologies to people who've heard this for the last 10 years. So I'm going to give a very, very brief overview. Most people have heard this. We have some new people, and by next month, we'll have more new people. So our district needs statement and our budget priorities are one of the most important of community board functions, and it's charter mandated. And right now, we're beginning the process for the fiscal year 25, which starts July 1st, 2024. So we're looking ahead and trying to plan for a year from now. First, we need to make any revisions to the district needs statement and hopefully finalize that in July so that we can then go on and prepare and vote on budget priorities in October. The office will update all the statistics in this statement. We need to make sure the statement is a statement of our unmet needs. It's not a policy paper, which people always seems easier to veer to that. The needs statement should be informing our budget priorities. And when we vote on the budget priorities or discuss them, there will be 25 expense priorities, which are like programs, salaries for agencies. And we will have 40 capital expenses. Most of our capital expenses are usually park reconstruction. They can be buildings, particularly building or reconstructing a building. So we have, I think Jake sent out our priorities from last year and the responses to those priorities, which came out about 2 or 3 weeks ago as part of the executive budget. They were not very satisfactory at all. This was this administration's first attempt at dealing with that. And there was a lot of critical feedback, particularly to the agency responses. And both a group of citywide district managers and also the Manhattan managers separately have been meeting with Office of Management Budget and with city planning to try and improve the responses for the members. And it's actually been very, very hopeful. They've been very responsive. It's, I have to see whether the agencies will comply, but hopefully they'll be more useful. And if you want, we could look at some of those answers. And that's about it, to be very brief, if there's any questions. In September, the committee chairs and district managers will meet with the agencies to discuss both the agency's priorities and answer any questions that the community boards may have. So any questions that the committees would come up with, you don't have to vote on them because they're not taking a position. But questions such as whether a program is well funded, whether there are vacancies, how long waiting lists are, we can have those all in writing and have the agencies be prepared to answer them. And actually be very useful if if we could get questions in June. Trevor?
Sure, you mentioned the agencies gave critical feedback and that it's not
We
a
gave
policy.
critical feedback. We gave critical feedback.
I know that in some years we put some things in these documents, which we know the agency is not going to respond to, more of a statement than anything else. What is the response of the agencies when we do this?
Those actually aren't the kind of responses we've been, the agency responses have just been not useful in general. I'll give you my favorite example. We asked for increased funding for more staff, particularly for more staff for homeless outreach. And their answer was to call 311 if we need a homeless outreach. So you can see they're just really inappropriate. It depends. If you give me an example, I'll tell you the kind of answers we get.
No, that's helpful. I know that each year we struggle to put things on because they sound like it should be on our documents, but they really won't have an impact. And sometimes they move things off of the document that might have an impact.
I see what you mean. You're talking, I think, more about our strategy of being effective. And
Right.
it's particularly if community boards agree on certain objectives. And like last year, many boards put increase for community board operating budget as number one to make that stand out. There are the agencies and do produce statistics of what the boards are asking for. So
Okay,
for
thank
instance, affordable housing across the city is the number one, related request.
Okay, thank you.
Jake, where do you want to go from here?
So I suppose everyone has been sent last year's district needs. And so I'm going to open up those now, but because I sent them in advance, I'm not going to go through it like I did with the resolution.
We don't
But-
really need to do anything this month with it, as long as, you know, people are, I think, prepared next month.
Yeah, well, so what I wanted to ask folks to do is if they had suggestions about where we should be making changes and kind of prompt that discussion, then we can go in the document to there, but we don't need to be making actual text amendments right now. So with that, I'll just open the floor. Raise your hands if you read the last year's DNS and you've got things that you'd like changed. Alistair, go ahead.
Sure. I read it. I don't have too many comments at all. The one point I think it's a little misleading is the third bullet point. And I'm surprised it made it in last year, where it says the median asking rents in CD3 went up 43% in the second quarter of 2022 compared to the period in 2021. That's a little misleading because rents had dropped dramatically because of COVID when people left the city. So they went back up, but that's not 43% above what one would consider the norm to be. So I just want to make that an accurate statement or edit it accordingly so it's more accurate.
So
Sure, and go ahead, Susan.
I was gonna say, you'll see it's footnoted, and that would automatically, those are updated yearly.
But it's footnoted, but it doesn't explain that, yeah, it went up 43%, but that's because rents
No, I
dramatically
understand.
increased during COVID.
I
You see what I'm saying?
understand. My point is that, you know, you're absolutely
Yeah.
correct. And there'll be sort of a course correction this year.
Okay, thanks.
This year's version will talk about second quarter of 2023 against 2022, and will likely reflect an increase in rents, but not 43%.
Sure.
Did you have other feedback?
No, that was the one item. I might have more once I read it more carefully, but that was the one thing that stood out for me. Thanks.
Thank you, Alistair. Any other members of the committee have feedback about the district needs statement? I was very happy with it last year. I don't think that the severity of the housing crisis has dampened since then, and so remain pretty happy with it now. But if people don't have feedback now, then I suppose what we should all do in the next month is read it again, think very critically about if anything has changed since last year, and if we have thought of any important needs that CD3 has with regard to housing and land use, and then we'll revisit it at the June meeting and come up with something a little more final. Susan, does that sound right to you?
Sure, and we have also, you know, into July. I don't know how crowded our agenda will be next month. So we have actually 2 months to think about, to think and finalize it. And we won't actually vote on it till October. So if something happens that will drastically change it, you will have the ability to do that.
Thank you, Susan. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I guess we'll do a final roll call, and then we will adjourn. Ariadna, go ahead.
Sorry, one quick question for the list of questions that you mentioned, Susan, that we should prepare if we have any. When should we have that by? Is that next meeting?
Yes, Jake, if you could screen share that budget priorities, because the list of questions refers to that, to give an example.
Yeah, give me one moment.
So the questions are directly related to that budget priority document?
Well, these are examples of what we voted on last year. So I thought I did one just for, oh, yeah, so I have, these are regarding housing. So they could be questions about staffing programs, that sort of thing. because it's borough-wide, we don't generally ask questions about individual, a lot of individual buildings, but if we do have them, we could actually submit them and get answers. You'll see a lot of issues on here regarding NYCHA housing. That all actually came from a list that NYCHA has that of repairs or reconstruction that they have to do. And we were prioritizing them. I'm not sure it was very effective or carried any weight, but that's what we did. But yes, you can submit the questions in June, or you can even email them to me, or if you have any questions about the format or anything else, you can certainly email me about that. We really encourage you to, supply questions.
That's clear. Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to take a final roll call vote and then we will stand adjourned. Or I guess I'll make a motion to adjourn. Jake Gold, yes. Damaris Reyes. Alistair Economicus.
Yes.
Andrea Gordillo.
Yes.
Herman Hewitt.
Yes.
Trevor Holland.
Yes.
Laura Lugo.
Yes.
Andrew Struther.
Yes, and good night, everyone.
Good night. Jackie Wong. Dominic Berg.
Yes.
Ariadna Chua.
Yes.
Steve Herrick. Megan Joy.
Yes.
Anisha Stephen. All right, move to adjourn.
Second.
So adjourned. Take care,
Night.
everyone.